The board would respectfully remind everybody to silence their phones if possible. Welcome to the meeting of the Charlotte Unified Development Board of Adjustment on Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. My name is Kevin Shea. I'm the co-chair of the board. Would the board members please go around and state their name of the record? Gary, if you'd start.
Good morning, Gary Young.
Hamilton Court.
Amy Lingy said.
Marshall Williamson.
Thank you. Also present are Solomon Fortune, our zoning administrator, John Kinley, the senior project manager, Bristol Montague, our planner, Kamisha Lampley, clerk to the board. Terry Hagler Gray is also the senior assistant city attorney advisor to the planning staff. Jill Sanchez Myers, senior assistant attorney advisor to the board. And our court reporter is Elizabeth Majors. Each of today's hearings is a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing. That means it's just like a court hearing. State law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this board must make its decision. These rules are different from other types of land use decisions like rezoning cases. The board's discretion is limited. The board must base its decision upon competent, relevant, and substantial evidence in the record. A quasi-judicial decision is not a popularity contest. It's a decision constrained by the standards in the ordinance and based on the facts presented. If you'll be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts and ordinance standards, not personal preference or opinion. General witness testimony is limited to facts. For certain topics, this board needs to hear opinion testimony from expert witnesses. These topics include projections about impacts on property values and projections about impacts of increased traffic. Individuals providing expert opinion must be qualified as experts and provide factual evidence upon which they base their expert opinion. While hearsay evidence is not specifically excluded, it is only given limited weight. Parties with standing have rights to participate fully, and parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Parties are limited to the applicant, the city, and individuals who can show that they will suffer special damages. Other individuals may provide testimony as witnesses when recognized by the board. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. Any individual wishing to speak as a witness today was required to sign up. And if you haven't done so, please do so now. The parties to each case are entitled to an impartial decision maker. A board member may not participate in a meeting or a hearing if they have a fixed opinion about the matter, a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, or a close familial, business, or associational relationship with an affected person. The parties to each case also have a right for any ex parte communication to be disclosed. Ex parte communication is any communication about the case outside of this hearing. That may include site visits as well as conversations with parties or the general public. At the start of each case, any potential conflict of interest or ex parte communication should be disclosed by a board member if applicable. These matters may also be raised by any affected party. I'll also note that the board has laptops and iPads. That's because we're not 21 years old anymore, so sometimes we'll have Polaris up or Google Maps. Please understand that. Today's meeting will follow the order printed on this agenda. The order of the regular agenda will be as follows. All parties who plan to give testimony must be sworn in. A city staff member will present the summary of the case. The board may question the staff member, and then the applicant may question the staff members. The applicant presents their testimony for the case and may sworn witnesses provide testimony. The board and the city staff may question the applicant and their witnesses. Other parties wishing to speak for or against the case will be given reasonable time to present sworn testimony. The staff and then the applicant will be given an opportunity for rebuttal. After hearing each case, the board will review each case, render a decision. This is usually done in closed deliberations after hearing each case. The chairperson calls for a motion and a second to approve or deny the variance or appeal. The decision will be made by a simple majority vote of the board. However, the board may elect to take up to 30 days to render a decision. You may remain present during the deliberations, or you may call the zoning staff after the session to receive the decision of the board. If you wish to receive a written copy of this decision letter, please indicate so on the sign-in sheets. All exhibits must remain with the board. If your case is not appealed to the Superior Court after 30 days, you may pick them up or they will be destroyed. Appeal from this board is to the Mecklenburg County Superior Court. You have 30 days from the date of the board's written decision to which to appeal in accordance with NCGS 160D 405D. Okay. Now we're going to open up our evidentiary hearings. John, let's swear everybody in.
And Mr. Chair, if I may just remind the board, if there is something such as Google Maps or something that any board member wishes to see that staff or the applicant has not presented, it'd be best if you ask staff if they can pull it up, or if you forget and you pull it up yourself, please try to then remember to ask staff to pull it up so that all the board members have the same information that each individual member has, and that you're all making a decision based on the same evidence. Because if it's helpful to one of you, it might be helpful to all of you. So thank you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give, given to the board, this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Kinsley.
All right. First case is variance 2025-00027 by Flournoy, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. A development group represented by Shad Spencer and John Floyd of Moore Van Allen for property located at 10,200 Claude Freeman Drive, owned by Centane Management Company, LLC. They're requesting two variances from Article 11, first being 11F1, referencing Table 11-5, to waive the requirement that the primary pedestrian entry to each principal structure abutting a frontage shall face the frontage for two of the buildings within the project, buildings 6 and 7, as indicated on their site plan, abutting proposed Road A on the proposed multi-dwelling development. And then Article 11.3G2, referencing Table 11.7, to waive the requirement that the primary pedestrian entry shall be a prominent entrance for those same two buildings, 6 and 7, abutting Road A of the proposed multi-dwelling development. So their site is up near the university area, David Taylor Drive, Mallard Creek Church Road, W.T. Harris, and basically this is the research park, and the site's here next to the Electrolux facility. If you're familiar where that's at, it's on this parcel right next door. Move this. So exhibit 2 is just the aerial map of the property. Again, there's the Electrolux facility here. This is Claude Freeman Drive, or sorry, David Taylor Drive. And this is, I believe, Claude Freeman. And then this is, the name of that neighborhood is Village something. Something Village. I don't remember what exactly the name of it. It'll come up later in the presentation. Huh? Alexander Village. Yes, thank you. This current zoning is CAC 1EX. Community Activity Center exception zoning district. So this property did get rezoned. And it was exception rezoning. For those of you who may not be familiar with that, is basically it's a district where you can get exceptions to certain standards of the ordinance if you do things to for community benefit to offset those. And it could be for things like additional building height or changes to certain standards within the ordinance. Again, two variances to Table 11.5 and 11.7. 11.5 basically says that for a multifamily stacked building, the primary pedestrian entry to each principal structure abutting a frontage shall face the frontage. And then 11.7 says that for multifamily stacked buildings, a frontage shall have a minimum of one prominent entrance as defined by the ordinance, and the primary pedestrian entry shall be a prominent entrance along the frontage as defined by the ordinance. And prominent entrance basically means that it stands out architecturally from the other entrances. It's not like a service access entrance or something like that. It's basically a main entrance into the building. Staff supports the variance request with two conditions that the applicants have agreed to. The subject building, or the first condition, is that the subject buildings 6 and 7 shall be provide primary or prominent pedestrian entrances along the internal 5-foot wide sidewalk network within the multi-dwelling development, which connects the residential buildings to the public sidewalk network abutting the public street frontage. And then it's the second condition, and this one's long, but I will read it out for the record. A landscape yard of varying width shall be installed along the network required street between the public sidewalk and the retaining walls within the area of the two proposed multifamily stacked buildings, subject to the variance request. One retaining wall or two terraced retaining walls shall be installed to accomplish the grade change from the street level to the location of the multifamily stacked buildings. And the design of the retaining walls will be finalized during land development review process based on engineering best practices. The required plantings will include one evergreen shrub per every 3 linear feet and one large, medium, or maturing tree per 30 linear feet. If there's one retaining wall with one larger planting area or one large, if there's one retaining wall with one large planting area, or then there'll be one large, I think there's a typo there, one large, medium, or maturing tree per 40 linear feet. And if there are two terraced retaining walls due to the decreased width of the planting area, so the trees align in alternating pattern with the required street trees, which are spaced 1 per 40 linear feet, and at least 40% of the required trees will be evergreen. Landscape yard requirements are illustrated in the planting and grading exhibit, which I'll show in a minute. So here's the approved rezoning plan for the site. It was rezoned by petition 2024-110. And as part of that rezoning, they are required to build a network required street that connects from David Taylor up to Claude Freeman. And then they have connections that are required to Heritage Pond Drive and Alexander Village up here. The buildings that we'll be talking about are located down here. So here's the approved concept plan that was attached to that rezoning plan. Again, you can see the two buildings here, and then this road that kind of meanders through the site to accomplish the connectivity that was required as part of the rezoning. This is the topography of the site, and you can see there's basically, you might want to call it a small mountain here. It's 790 feet at the highest points in this ridge here. And down at the lower points of the site, my laser pointer has stopped working. It's 650 feet at that bottom corner down here. It even goes a little bit lower in this kind of recess point. But the road, you can kind of see it outlined in here because I think it was previously mapped as one Electrolux Way, but on the rezoning plan it's proposed Road A. It kind of snakes through and tries to follow the topography as much as possible, but because of that slope, they have some retaining walls that they'll have to be installing to accommodate the grade. So Exhibit 9, road profile exhibit, this shows the in green line here. And let me shift this out of the way again. So you can see how this is the intersection of David Taylor and Road A, the low point, and that topo increases. This is the high point of the site, 790 feet. And then the intersection of Road A and Heritage Pond is about 750 feet above sea level. And then the connection to Heritage Village is about 765. So if we're looking at this topo, it corresponds with the map below. This is the intersection of David Taylor at 650 feet. You go uphill at the grade is roughly ranges from 3 to 8%, depending on where you're at on the road. But you're basically going uphill until you get to the intersection of Heritage Pond at Road A, which is about 750 feet. And then you continue to go up to this part of Heritage Pond at the Heritage Village community, and that's 765 feet. So in order to make the grade work for that road and make those connections work, they're having to install some retaining walls here on this slope, because if you remember from the previous image, all the high point of the site is basically here, and it drops down towards David Taylor Drive. So high points up here and it slides dropping down towards the southern end of the property. Here's a close-up image of on Exhibit 10. This is the planting and grading exhibit for the single wall option. And you can see they have the proposed retaining wall indicated here, and then the larger planting area that can be provided due to the single wall layout. So then you have your sidewalk, or I think in this case, it's a multi-use path, and then street trees. And then in this part of the road, it's actually, the lanes are separated. So you have your southbound lane here, larger plantings space in the middle, and then your northbound lane here. And that is illustrated again. So the area we're talking about and looking at is this area right here. This is the cross section from the single wall, Exhibit 11. Again, you can see how they're having to cut into the side of that slope to accommodate the topo. And there'd be the retaining wall and then your building up at the top of the hill.
Okay.
And then Exhibit 12 is their planting and grading exhibit for the terraced wall option. And you can see there's 2 retaining walls indicated here with their shrubs planted, and then the smaller trees at a different spacing alternating with the street trees to accommodate the space for them to grow. And then from a cross section for the terraced option, Exhibit 13, again, just shows how the retaining wall would be stepped to accommodate that. It does result in a little bit lower height above the street for the building, 720 feet versus 736 feet. But in all, it's about a difference of, so a difference from road A, which would be in this area about an elevation of 688 feet to the proposed building 6 and 7. It's about a difference of between 38 and 48 feet, depending on which option they end up going with. Either way, they need a variance or requesting a variance for the pedestrian entries, because a prominent entrance out would just go to retaining walls. And it would serve no visual appeal for any pedestrians who are walking along the street, because they're not even really going to be able to see these walls of these buildings from down below, and wouldn't serve any practical purpose for allowing pedestrians to entry into the buildings.
Staff have a preference between those two?
No, and really the question for the variance request isn't for you guys to decide between these, because they'll have to determine which is the best option when they get into their actual construction and drawing plans to figure out what's best from an engineering standpoint. Really, the request is just specifically about whether or not they should be able to not have to do the prominent entrances and those two elements that are required from the ordinance.
That single retaining wall is then something in the order of 30 something feet, that one right there?
It's 600, according to this, at least it's 695 feet here to 735 to the top.
40 feet.
Right.
In your previous illustration, that's showing the trees, well, it's showing street trees on one side of the street, but not street trees on the other side of the street.
I think that's just what they just drew in to show what's applicable to the request. But there would be street trees on the southern side of proposed road A, and according to the ordinance requirements. So slide 14 is your variance criteria. Again, just a reminder, all 4 of these have to be met in order for the board to grant the variance request. And I'll give you a minute to look over the findings of fact before I go through those.
This is all part of the Centene development, the larger Centene.
Yes. Yeah, I think they've broken it up into 2 phases. So this is phase 1, and then phase 2 would be the northern portion.
Gotcha. continue, John.
All right, so unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance due to the steep topography. As shown on the approved rezoning plan, RZP 2024-110, the multi-dwelling development would be required to install a network required street extending from David Taylor Drive north through the site. The grade difference between the signalized intersection in David Taylor Drive and the first intersection with proposed Road B, which is an extension of Heritage Pond Drive, within development is approximately 115 feet, and this grade difference requires the construction of retaining walls with an average total height of approximately 30 feet along the north side of the proposed frontage of Road A abutting buildings 6 and 7. For the applicant's street cross-section exhibit, the multi-use path to be constructed as a component of the proposed Road A would be at about an elevation of 688 feet. And the proposed building pads for building 6 and 7 is an elevation of 736 feet, which is a difference of 48 feet. Again, if they do the two terraced option, the elevation drops a little bit. So I think the difference there is 38 feet. The grade difference between the required retaining walls between the two buildings and the frontage creates a hardship to provide the UDO required pedestrian entries along the street frontage. Hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property. The subject property has severe grade differences between the network required street frontage and the two abutting multifamily stacked buildings. The hardship to provide UDO required primary and prominent entrances along the frontage is caused by the site's topography and the average approximate 30-foot grade difference between the subject multifamily stacked buildings and the abutting network required street frontage. Hardship does not result from actions that were taken by the applicant. The act of purchasing property with the knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify the granting of variance is not a self-created hardship. The applicant submitted a rezoning petition RZP 2024-110 with which approved by council on April 21st of 2025, and that allowed the proposed development which is under contract to purchase the property in its current condition with the understanding that circumstances exist such as site topography that may justify the granting of variance to allow for the proposed development. The applicant did not cause the requirement for the street connectivity, nor did they cause the significant topography of the site. The requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance in that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. The two proposed multifamily buildings or multifamily stacked buildings are subject to the variance request will have primary and prominent pedestrian entrances oriented along an internal minimum 5-foot wide sidewalk network within the multifamily or multi-dwelling development, which connects the residential buildings to the public sidewalk network abutting this public street frontage, which meets the pedestrian connectivity requirements of Article 16.6 of the UDO. And to reduce the visual impact of the retaining walls and to make the multi-use path more comfortable to place to walk and bike, the applicant has offered a condition that the landscape yard of varying width shall be installed along the network required street between the public sidewalk and the retaining walls within the area of the proposed multifamily stacked buildings subject to the variance request. One retaining wall or two retaining walls shall be installed to accomplish the grade change from the street to the location of multifamily stacked buildings. The design of the retaining walls will be finalized during the development review process based on engineering best practices. The required plantings will include one evergreen shrub per 3 linear feet and one large medium maturing tree per 30 feet if there's one retaining wall. We'll need to reword this, I think, and then one large planting area or one large or medium maturing tree for every 40 linear feet if there are two terraced retaining walls due to the decreased width of the planting area. And so the trees align in an alternating pattern with the required street trees, which are spaced 1 per 40 linear feet. At least 40% of the required trees will be evergreen. Landscape yard requirements are illustrated in 2 planting and grading exhibits. The granting of the variance would not impact the adjacent properties as it will maintain the grades along the adjacent and connecting public streets. And there's a sign on property on slide 18, exhibit 18. That concludes our presentation.
Are those landscaping requirements in excess of what's basically required, I guess?
Yeah, so there would not be, there's not any landscaping behind the multi-use path that would be required as part of, any sort of offset to this. So that's just something that they have offered to do. Yeah, obviously we have parking lot screening and that sort of thing, but that wouldn't come into play because we're not talking about space between, between the street and the parking lot, it's between the buildings. So yeah, no additional screening would be required outside of the condition of the variance.
And the other question I have is, so you've got like 12 buildings roughly, maybe 10 buildings on this site, and 2 have frontage on streets. And those are the ones that have to have primary entrances because they have frontage. But the other ones, because they don't have frontage, or
Well, so all of these buildings that are along this road would have to have prominent entrances facing these frontages. This one here, I
what
think,
about those 2 on the back side that
uh,
down by the retention pond over there?
over here, these.
Bottom right.
Laser keeps them
Right.
right. You're talking about right here?
Yeah, I mean, they
So
don't have
the-
any frontage, do they have
Those
frontage?
would not have to have a prominent entry
Okay.
on the street, right, Solomon? Am I correct? So, yeah, it's just the ones that are along the street, basically. And these 2 are the ones that are impacted by the typo. The others, as far as we know, at least at this point, would be okay. I don't know how far along they've gotten on phase 2 planning, so, they may not know exactly for the rest of the buildings, but for what we're working with now, we know that these 2 buildings are impacted.
Any further questions for Mr. Kinley? Thank you, sir. Any discussion? Do we need to close? We don't have to close, do we? If anybody want to make a motion,
I'd make a motion to approve the variance.
I second.
Mr. Williamson makes a motion to approve.
Do we need to, with the conditions as stated by, so friendly amendment or Mr. Williamson?
Marshall, you want to try that again?
I would make a motion to approve with the conditions outlined in the findings and facts.
I second that motion.
Mr. Williamson makes a motion to approve. Mr. Young seconds. Mr. Young,
Young, yes.
Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
his son,
Son, yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Shay, yes. Board's approved. I want to go through, Mr. Kinley, you made one change though in the findings of fact. I think it was paragraph 2. You were talking about 30 feet versus 40 feet. I want to make sure we get that corrected. Required plantings will include 1 evergreen shrub per 3 linear feet and 1 large medium maturing tree per 30 feet. I think you said you wanted 40 feet there.
It's 30 feet if it's 1 retaining wall, it's 40
Yeah.
feet if it's 2 retaining.
And I think that's where I was just struggling reading that sentence because of the length of the sentence. So there is the or there
Deborah, we
after
need
the
Deborah.
words planting one large planting area. And then it says, or 1 large medium maturing tree for every 40 feet if there's 2 terraces. So it does read correctly. It was just a long sentence and I was struggling with it. I haven't had enough coffee yet.
Oh, I see. I got you. Okay. Everybody okay with the run-on sentence like that?
I'm fine. Court moved to approve the findings in fact and conclusions of law.
Court makes approve. Court makes a motion to approve.
Williamson, second.
Williamson, second. Mr. Young,
Young, yes.
Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
the son,
Son, yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Shay, yes. Findings of facts are approved. Case 2025-00027 is approved. Thank you. Next case 2025-000028.
Hello, this is variance case 2025-000028 for a driveway and garage reduction. CRC Camille's Renovation and Construction Incorporated is represented by David Murray of Murray Law Firm for property located at 1933/1935 St. Mark Street,
Thank you.
owned by CRC Camille's Renovation and Construction Incorporated. It's two variance requests from Article 19.6. The first one is 19.6A1A3C to reduce the minimum driveway length from 20 feet to 16.7 feet, a 3.3 foot reduction. The second variance is to reduce the minimum garage setback from 20 feet to 16.7 feet, a 3.3 foot reduction, excuse me. Here's the vicinity map. It is off of Betty's Ford Road, west of 77. The zoning is N1C, Neighborhood 1 zoning district. And this is the lot here. A close-up of the aerial map on Exhibit 3. Two variance requests. One is to reduce the minimum driveway length from 20 feet to 16.7 feet, a 3.3 foot reduction. And the second is to reduce the minimum garage setback from 20 feet to 16.7 feet, a 3.3 foot reduction. And what 19.6 says for C and D is driveways and parking pad spaces shall be a minimum of 20 feet in length as measured from the right-of-way, back of sidewalk, or back of shared use path, whichever is greater. And the garages for individual units shall be set back a minimum 20 feet for the required zoning district setback, whichever is greater. The 20 foot distance shall be measured from the right-of-way, back of sidewalk, or back of shared use path, whichever is greater. Here is the physical survey. You would see that the driveway is 6.7 feet from the right-of-way and is 30+ feet from the edge of pavement. Here are plot plan with building.
Sorry, can you go back for a second?
Sure.
Is there a sidewalk there someplace?
There's not a sidewalk on that street.
There is
No.
no sidewalk.
No.
Thank you.
On Exhibit 6, you will see the building permit and the LDIRL application. Here's the variance criteria. All 4 standards must be met. If you'd like to look over your findings of facts, I can wait.
Could you go back to the permit?
Sure.
So when they applied for the permit, was the garage over the setback or not? I can't tell from here.
So the zoning district setback is 17 feet for N1C. So that's what is indicated on the plot plan and the LDRL. And that therein lies where the confusion with this project occurred, is that what they showed on the permits, 17 feet, matching the ordinance required setback for the district. But then in Article 19, it requires that additional setback for garage, street facing garages. That never was caught during the permit review process and all that, and it didn't actually, we'll cover it in the, Chris will cover it in the findings, but it basically came up whenever the applicant got an as-built final survey done, completed. So the building's already constructed, and they built it according to what was shown on their plot plan and their LDIRL. And that's how we ended up with the setback of basically 17 feet rather than 20 feet from the garages.
the surveyor's not necessarily putting garage on their survey or.
The plot plan actually does label the garage, but it, multiple people saw it. Inspectors went out to the site to check staking for, foundations and all that, and it was not caught.
There's garage there.
You can continue.
Thank you. Unnecessary hardships result from the strict application of the ordinance because the variance is needed because, the variance is needed because to meet the ordinance requirement, the structures would have to be torn down. The need for the variance is a result of a surveyor error that led to a duplex being constructed 3.3 feet closer to the front property line than the required by the UDO. The surveyor staked the building box for the applicant. The surveyor was instructed by the applicant to place the setback at 20 feet because of the 20-foot garage setback rule. However, the surveyor placed the stakes for the building based on the 17-foot N1C front setback shown on the residential permit plot plan. All proper LDIRL review was completed, permits were obtained, the inspections were completed by the city and county, and no one realized the error until the applicant obtained an as-built survey, which showed the error had occurred. The applicant is voluntarily bringing this request forward to resolve the issue. At this time, no notice of violation have been issued. The hardship does result from conditions that are peculiar to the property. The hardship results from the conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as the error by the staking surveyor, the city and county inspectors missing the encroachment, the location of the right-of-way front property line being approximately 15 feet from the edge of pavement, the location of the existing driveways being 16.7 feet long, and duplex garage doors being 16.7 feet from the front property line, but over 31 feet from the edge of pavement. The hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant. The applicant, in good faith, relied upon the staking completed by the staking surveyor, who relied in good faith on the approved plans and permit plot plan. The requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance in that the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. The error is not evident because the edge of pavement on St. Mark's Street is approximately 15 feet beyond the property line. The driveway itself is approximately 31.7 feet in length from the back of curb. The violation is not obvious and haven't led to a notice of violation. Driveway is over 20 feet from the back of curb. The 16.7 feet of depth provided is sufficient for parking a vehicle. The variance requested is only 0.9 feet beyond what could be granted allowed by an administrative adjustment through the UDO. The duplex structure itself meets this required 17-foot front setback. Granting the variance would alter the essential character of the neighborhood. Would not, that's different. That is an error. Granting the variance would not alter the essential character of neighborhood.
Number 23.
Number 23. Yes, thank you. Here is a sign posted on the property, and that's the end of the presentation.
Any questions for Ms. Montague? Thank you.
You said the structure wouldn't alter the makeup of the character of the neighborhood. Go back to that picture.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Any motions?
Court moved to approve, the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Court.
Young seconds the motion.
Mr. Young seconds that motion. Mr. Young,
Young, yes.
Court,
Court, yes.
Ms. Sun. Mr. Williamson.
Williamson, yes.
Shay, yes. Variance is approved. Two changes to the findings of fact. Number 23 should say granting the variance would not alter, correct?
Correct.
And just for my third grade grammar, if you could change number 20 to say the violation is not obvious and hasn't led to a notice of violation, I would appreciate that. Sorry. Someone has to speak up for Deborah when she's not here. With those changes, anybody want to make a motion?
Court moved to approve as amended in 20 and 23.
Mr. Court, thank you.
One more correction. It's or 19 actually. There's two driveways, so when it says driveway, it should be plural driveways.
I'll amend my, motion to include, the revision in 19 to make driveways plural.
Thank you, Mr. Court. Will you hear a second?
Do we need to change the word is
Yeah.
in number
Say
19 to are? The driveways are, so deletion of the word itself,
Self, yep.
change is to are.
And maybe put a period at the end of that sentence. Since we're modifying it.
So it should read, the first sentence is okay. The second, the driveways are approximately 31.7 feet in length from back of curb. Period.
I like that amendment. I would like to, add that to my motion, for, item 19.
Mr. Court, 3 times the charm. Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Mr. Williamson, thank you.
Young, yes.
Young is yes. Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Court, Ms. Sun.
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Shay, yes. Case 2025-000028 is approved. Thank you, everyone. All right. Case 00029 has been deferred. Is that correct? Our last case is 2025-00030. McKinley.
All right. So this is a case by Old Providence Club, represented by Jason Dolan of Timmons Group for a property located at 5630 Sharon View Road, and the parcel is owned by Old Providence Racquet Club. They are seeking 2 variances, a variance from Article 15.4 NNN number 2 to reduce the outdoor recreation facilities separation from 50 feet to 36.5 feet, which is a 13.5-foot reduction to allow the construction of a new pool clubhouse, and a variance from Article 16.6B1 to waive the requirement for pedestrian connection to the public sidewalk. Keyboard is not advancing for some reason. Here we go. All right. The site is off down south of on Providence Road, off of Old Providence at Sharon View. Sharon View comes up this way, and then Old Providence comes down and connects down to Ray. So we're next to McAlpine Creek, and that's on Exhibit 1 vicinity. Exhibit 2 is the zoning map. It's in 1A zoning and for the entire property and pretty much everything around it, except for a few smaller developments. Exhibit 3 is a close-up aerial of the pool area. Shows the existing pool clubhouse here to the left of the swimming pool. And you can see the facility in this area here. McAlpine Creek is basically at the edge of the property on the eastern side, and then you have the driveway that goes out to Sharon View along the backside of the single-family homes in the abutting single-family neighborhood, which you can see on this slide, on the zoning map slide. So they're asking for two variances again, one from 15.4 and in N2, which has basically says that outdoor recreation facilities have to have a 50-foot separation measured from the closest edge to any active use component or ancillary facility to the nearest lot line. So a pool clubhouse would be an ancillary facility for the outdoor recreation facility. And therefore, the edge of that ancillary facility should be 50-foot separation from the nearest lot line of single-family residential homes or residential homes in this case. Non-residential and mixed-use developments in 16.6B, again, requires a pedestrian connection that's a minimum of 5 feet in width and is required from the primary entry to the adjacent public sidewalk, and includes connection to the required sidewalk if it's not yet constructed. There is a sidewalk on Sharon View. An individual sidewalk connection that would not be required if the non-residential building would result in a sidewalk that's has a length greater than 1,320 feet. So those are the two variances for those two sections of the ordinance that they're seeking. Staff recommends approval of the variance with the following condition. Additional landscaping with trees and shrubs as shown on the applicant's plans would be provided between the existing driveway and the property line abutting parcels 2110135, 2110133, 211110132, and 2110131 to meet or exceed the Class B landscape yard planting standards. This is the Mecklenburg County GIS layers with the environmental layers on exhibit slide 6. It shows the community and FEMA floodplain covers pretty much the entirety of the site. The community encroachment area covers the entire area where the swimming pool and clubhouse are. And then you have FEMA encroachment and water quality buffers that are more close to the river or the creek. On the southern side of the site. So exhibit 7 is the applicant's site plan, shows the area where the two variances are being requested. So variance 1, which is the separation requirement of that 50-foot separation. This area here of the building would be encroaching into that 50-foot separation requirement. Again, their plan is demolish the existing pool clubhouse building, which is built in like, I want to say might have been the 60s. And then the new building that they're constructed is proposed to be in this location here. And then the second variance is to the sidewalk that would connect to the public sidewalk on Sharon View. And that distance is 620 feet. So doesn't meet the 1,300 automatic exclusion from having to provide it. And so, but they are seeking the variance. And that is primarily due to the impacts of that would be occur to the floodplain if they were to have to install that.
Just so I'm clear, John, was there a discussion about orientation changing that so that it was to the back? Yeah, stay there.
So I don't know what discussions or what all they've looked at whenever they looked at the layout. Other than there's floodplain here and they have a no rise, they did do a flood study and to show with this location in their proposed design, there would be no rise.
So this is higher. This is the highest.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They're putting it as far away as they can from the creek because of the floodplain.
Gotcha.
And again, that's illustrated pretty well here. Is right now the building is in the community encroachment area. They moved the building to this location, then they're only in the floodplain. And they, like I said, they did do a flood study to confirm that there would be no rise with their proposed design. And we do have that in here as an exhibit.
What's a community encroachment? What is that?
Solomon may know the terms better than I do. Neither one of us are floodplain experts, but it's just a term. I think there's some differences in the rules for what you do in each.
That's
Yeah.
okay. It's a
Yeah,
problem.
there's some difference in rules. I think it's for
there's encroachment when FEMA does their maps and then for their, your like insurance or things like that, what's allowed to encroach.
Okay. Some community regulation that is encroachment or?
Yeah, I think it's
It-
additional regulations beyond what the base FEMA regulations are.
Right.
Exhibit 8 is the Google Street View. Google was good enough to go down this little private drive into the site and gives us a good view of the little drive. It's basically a driveway into the facility. And so Sharon View is at the very end of this image here, and you can see that driveway coming down into the parking area. The existing pool clubhouse building is right here on the page. And basically they would be proposing to build it in this area here. The second image is just a street view looking up towards the single family homes that are abutting this. Again, the ordinance would require 50 foot of separation between these homes' property line, which sits about the top of the hill, maybe a little bit further down, actually. I'm not sure exactly where the property lines fall. But from that point, they should be 50 feet away according to the ordinance requirements. And then they would be, according to the ordinance requirements, have to install a sidewalk all the way down to Sharon View from here.
The staff have a drone budget,
No.
Barbara?
Exhibit 9 is site plan details. This shows how they're proposing to provide that additional landscaping to meet or exceed Class B landscape yard standards abutting those parcels that I listed off. These parcels here on the map. Again, 50-foot encroachment or 50-foot separation comes to about where this black dash line is. So 13.5 feet of the building would encroach into that 50-foot separation requirement. And then here's where the proposed sidewalk would have to go if they were required to install it. This is a site cross section. I think we've got a more up-to-date slide in here for that. Where'd you insert that?
That's it.
Oh, did I skip it? Oh, it's this one. Okay. So this is we received this updated exhibit 12 site cross section. I may flip back to this real quick just because it provides a little closer view. So this is the cross sectional view showing the single family homes up on Scarlet Oak Lane. Existing vegetation that's along the back of those properties. Again, they would be providing additional landscaping in this area here between the property lines and the private driveway, which is in this location. And then here's the proposed pool clubhouse building with that encroachment of 13.5 feet here. And then this is the existing pool clubhouse building that would be removed. So I'm gonna skip talking about that one and we'll use this one for the landscaping. So they've had some additional discussions as recently as Sunday with the neighbors. And as a result of those discussions, they've agreed to provide some additional landscaping on their site plan. And you can see that landscaping is indicated here on either end of the building. And that's to help just provide some additional screening from the active use of the swimming pool from the neighbors, help reduce noise and that sort of thing that those neighbors may encounter when there's activity going on at the pool. And then it again just shows the 13.5 foot encroachment, the additional landscaping between the driveway and the property line that they are also doing. This exhibit 11 is referencing the flood study. We do have a copy of that in our files. It was 198 pages, so I've felt to save paper, not to print it all, but we do have it referenced, and that screen clipped the page from showing the no-rise certification that they received for the proposed building, which again is indicated at the top of the page underneath that bar that keeps popping down. Exhibit 13 is the variance criteria. All 4 of these need to be met, and I'll give you a minute to look over the findings of facts before I go over them.
John, it looked like there was, in one of those pictures, there was a way coming from the neighborhood down that hill? Is that gonna be just left alone? Is that gonna be improved at all?
It's not actually connecting to the neighborhood as a whole.
Okay.
It's coming out of someone's backyard. So I don't know if it's a pool club member or something like that, or a racket club member, and they just have a shortcut to get to the facility. Technically, there's supposed to be a buffer along that whole property line. So potentially, I don't know if that would get removed or if they would work with that neighbor to keep it in place. It would be just a non-conformity and be allowed to remain as it is, but yeah, I don't know if that impacts any of that additional landscaping that they would be proposing. It's not actually indicated on the site plan, so I don't know exactly where it falls on here. I think it's roughly somewhere either here or here. It might be part of this. I'm not sure. There's some of the neighbors have also done drainage improvements as well in their backyard because of the way the property slopes. So that may be part of that. I'm not sure. The applicant is here, the applicant's agent is here. So if if y'all have additional questions that I'm unable to answer about the specifics of what's going on along those property lines, pull it off of the recommendation agenda and ask those questions if you wanted to.
There's still gonna be some stormwater issues they're gonna have to face, correct? Some kind of water control for the new construction.
Yeah, they'll have to meet all the stormwater requirements. That's separate ordinance requirements.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if this discussion portion, but the item number 25, where they talk about it, where the staff has resolved that it being a private club, not limiting the goals of the UDO, I think is a compelling fact. It's a built out neighborhood where they don't have a population boom with the public coming in and out. I think that.
But let's let John finish.
Yeah.
Okay. Oops. Unnecessary hardship would not result. Sorry, there's a typo there. That should be would result from the strict application of the ordinance. Let's make sure that's correct in the findings, though. It's correct in the findings, so that's just the error on the slide. As seen on the Mecklenburg County GIS, the majority of the site is within the floodplain of McAlpine Creek. The site is also impacted by wetlands and water quality buffers. Restricting the placement of the proposed pool clubhouse with separation requirement is an unnecessary hardship due to the significant presence of the floodplain throughout the subject property. Alternative pool clubhouse locations outside the separation area would lie further within the floodplain, closer to the creek, and could which increases impacts to the sensitive environment along the creek. Risk of safety hazards to the property and additional regulatory compliance issues. The installation of a 5-foot sidewalk from the pool clubhouse to the public sidewalks along Sharon View and Old Providence would be approximately 620 linear feet or more, and would have no public benefit due to the private operations of the facility. And construction of the sidewalk would create impacts of land disturbance and additional impervious surface areas to the floodplain and sensitive environment along the creek. Hardship does not result from conditions that are peculiar to the Again, there's a typo there. Should read the positive. The hardship does result from the conditions that are peculiar to the property. There's significant presence of the floodplain throughout the subject property, and there's a narrow development area located between the pool and the property line. And per the applicant's flood study, the proposed clubhouse has a no-rise condition, meaning that the proposed location and design of the new building would not increase the FEMA flood elevation. The property size and location of the development within the property would result in long over 600-foot pedestrian connections to the public sidewalks, and the sidewalk requirement would create additional impervious areas within the floodplain. Hardship does not result from actions that are taken by the applicant. The site has been developed with a pool and clubhouse since at least 1963, and that was prior to the legacy zoning ordinance and the UDO. And the majority of the site is within the floodplain already. Changes to the flood boundaries have further limited the buildable areas of the property, and the nearest location outside the floodplain that is compliant with the separation requirement is approximately 1,063 feet from the swimming pool. The required pedestrian connection to the public sidewalks would create additional impervious surfaces in the floodplain. The ordinance requires connections regardless of the use and does not provide exceptions for private facilities where pedestrian traffic is from the general public is discouraged. The requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, and that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. The proposed pool clubhouse will act as an additional screening from the active outdoor use and activities within the pool area. The applicant is offered a condition that additional landscaping to include trees and shrubs exceed Class B landscape yard planting standard will be provided as illustrated on the applicant's plans between the existing driveway and abutting single-family homes. I would add to this that the commitment to provide that additional landscaping on either end of the building adjacent to the pool itself. The proposed pool clubhouse has been designed to minimize the impact on the floodplain, implementing stormwater management practices and ensuring no rise condition per the applicant's flood study, and ensures hydrological functions of the site are preserved. A variance to the pedestrian connection for the private club would not limit the goals of the UDO to promote connectivity, walkability, and public safety. There are internal sidewalks that provide pedestrian connectivity within the club's property. And additional impervious surface caused by the sidewalk connection would contribute to additional runoff within the floodplain and floodway. And there's a sign at the rec club driveway on slide 18, and I'll take any questions if you have them.
Any questions for Mr. Kinley?
This was a two-story building. Would y'all have a problem with that?
The height is 24 feet. I don't know if that's going to be 2 stories or not. But with the way the land slopes down and the additional screening that they're going to be providing, we don't have any concerns about that. Plus, we feel like the building does, because they're relocating it to where it's basically more between the pool and the houses, it provides more of a buffer with the building itself as well from any noise that would be occurring at the swimming pool.
You don't call out the conditions separately here. Do we need to do that?
We do have, it's a paragraph before number 1 has the condition specified. So if we want to modify that to include that additional landscaping commitment on either end of the building, that we can modify that, or we can modify it in number 23.
Yeah, okay. Okay with that. Any more questions for Mr. Kinley? Thank you, John. Mr. Court, did you want to talk about?
Yeah, so in evaluating this, I think that number 25, the variance to the pedestrian connection for a private club would not limit the goals of the UDO to promote connectivity, walkability, and public safety. Their internal sidewalks to providing pedestrian connectivity within the property. I think that's pretty compelling that the neighborhood's been established for a long time. There's pedestrians coming and going. There hasn't been a problem or a demand, and I'm sure the club would be clamoring to build this at this opportunity if it was a priority for them. So I feel like it's meeting the needs of the members there. And there's not a major change to the area that would require the public to access.
Thank you, Mr. Court. Anybody else? Do I hear any motions?
Court move to approve the variance.
Condition or?
Oh, with the condition as stated in by staff in the
Number 23.
recommendation of approval.
Mr. Court makes a motion to approve.
Young seconds the motion.
Number 3, Mr. Young seconds that. Thank you. Mr. Young,
Young, yes.
Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Ms. Sun,
Sun, yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Shay, yes. Case 00030 is approved. Finding of fact,
For 23, I would just add a sentence that says maybe the applicant has agreed to provide landscape screening on both ends of the proposed building as shown on the site cross-section exhibit.
what exhibit?
I can read that again if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do it for the court reporter.
The applicant has agreed to provide landscape screening on both ends of the proposed building as shown on the site cross-section exhibit.
So we'll be deleting the rest of the,
That's in lieu of 23.
no, I would just add that as a second sentence to number 23.
Okay,
okay.
Basically, it's two parts. One part being the additional landscaping between the driveway and the property line, and then the additional landscaping on either end of the building.
Okay, and would it be correct to edit the initial statement where the applicant has offered a condition to say that the applicant has accepted a condition?
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
fair.
And John, can you repeat that one more time? I want to make
Yes.
sure I have it. Thank you.
So the full item number 23, I'll just start from the beginning. The applicant has accepted a condition that additional landscaping to include trees and shrubs to meet or exceed a Class B landscape yard planting standard will be provided as illustrated on the applicant's plans between the existing driveway and abutting single-family homes. The applicant has agreed to provide landscape screening on both ends of the proposed building as shown on the site cross-section exhibit.
you good? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as notated?
Minutes, findings.
Sorry, finding of facts, I'm sorry, finding of facts.
Court moved to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law as amended in item 23.
Thank you, Mr. Court. Do I hear a second?
Sun, second.
Sun second, thank you. Mr. Young,
Young, yes.
Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Son,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Shay, yes. Finding of facts have been approved for case 2025-00030. That concludes cases heard. All right. Going to the minutes. Can we go to the minutes? Ms. Sanchez Myers, I spent some time on the last case, which you were most concerned about. I want to make sure that the reads correctly for you. And let's get to that case. The fence case. Sixteen. No, this is, I'm talking about the one that was,
Fence, see?
yeah, this is correct. I'm talking about the one that was, the Bundy case. See if I can find it, I'm sorry.
Page 12,
Page 12,
page
okay?
11 and 12.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that this reads the way that we wanted to make sure it read.
No,
This is page 11,
okay.
case 00021.
Mhm.
Want to make sure we captured what you wanted to capture last week. It read correctly to me, but I just want to make sure you had reviewed it.
Yes, I did review these minutes and I sent any suggested edits to the clerk, so I've not reviewed the final draft. I'm assuming that the recommended changes have been incorporated, which she says they have, so
Perfect.
I trust that.
All right, do I ever hear a motion about approving the minutes?
Court move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Court.
Young second.
Mr. Young, thank you. Seconds it. Mr. Young,
Young, yes.
Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
the son,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson.
Williamson, yes.
Mr. Shea says yes. I believe we are complete and we are adjourned.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody.
The next meeting is July 29th, I believe. So I don't know if anybody's got any summer travel plans, but if you do, let me know.
Yes, thank you.
I believe there's lunch or breakfast in the room next door.